Yesterday, someone at the kitchen table asked what I was going to talk about, and it just burst out: relationship. There was no choice in that, because the topic of the day, the week, the month, maybe all of time, is relationship. Our difficulty in it, our inability in it, our yearning for it, failure in it, pain of it, joy of it. In saying whatever may come out, the talk is not prepared or planned. I may feel quite passionately about something I'm saying, and there may be intensity in saying it. I don't always put everything into a question. I used to do that much more in the beginning, and some people were quite critical of it. They said, "Can you only speak in questions? It's very hard to listen to you if everything you say is just questions." So I've tried to accommodate for that by saying some things, but it doesn't mean that this is dogma that is being pronounced or belief. If this is the feeling that you get, then please question it, with me or alone. What is said is not said to be believed or to be incorporated into a body of knowledge, but to be listened to as a live question. Is this really so? Not Toni says it's so and therefore it must be right or it must be wrong because she too has limitations, which she does. But to question together, to look at things alone and together and not accept anything on authority. On word, on theory, on phrase, but to look for ourselves as we go, as we live, or as we dialogue with each other. Someone said yesterday in a meeting that we had, "I would really like to relate with you on an equal footing." We may say that and mean that, but what does it mean to relate on an equal footing? What is our footing? What do we stand on when we talk with each other or live with each other, relate with each other? What do we stand on? You and me. Do we stand on all of our past experiences, learnings, conditionings? Hereditary as well as cultural, collective, whatever you may call it. Racial, religious, ideological. Accumulation, is that what we stand on? We all stand on that. Find out for yourself, I'm saying it. We all stand on it, but it may be different for you than for me. So, if we attach or insist or defend our point of view, our background, maybe unawares, not aware of it. And you stand on, defend, and argue or relate from your background, then we're in conflict with each other. If there's no awareness of the fact that we stand both on conditioning, on accumulated past experiences, models, conditioning, whatever the word may be. Do you see the difference? Whether one sees we both are conditioned in talking here. But do we see that we're both conditioned and not cling to our individual conditioning and say mine is right or mine has something over yours? Or it's inevitable that we argue from that or relate from that. Impossible that there be freedom from that. If we say that, then we can never relate to each other on an equal footing. But if we see that we're both conditioned in our outlook, in our personality, in our way of talking, in our goals, in our likes and dislikes, even though the goals and likes and dislikes and language may differ, but we're both conditioned. And we're trying to see if we can relate in spite of that, taking the fact that this is so, but not be totally dominated and controlled by that, but find another equal footing. Is there another equal footing on which there is no disparity? No conflict, no difference? We're asking that. We're asking that seriously, without trying to paint a pie in the sky. Whether we can relate with each other in spite of our different conditionings and pasts. Being aware that this is so. Relating on another footing, which is no conflict, no disparity, no you and me, just the silence and immense space of listening to each other and what we have to say, what we are trying to find out. Last time we met here in Springwater for a talk, we were questioning the whole format of talk, and if I remember correctly, what we came to is not to interrupt the talk if one wants to ask something that would be disruptive, maybe disturbing to people, but afterwards, if one wants to ask questions or pin something down or say, can you go over this again, or I don't agree with you, then to have time for that. And I will try to do that. Have some room, time for questioning after maybe a relatively brief talk. I hope it will remain relatively brief. You never know. We were talking about relationship and the questions that have come up very recently, even though they are not new questions, are why do I have this tremendous yearning for a mate? Why do we build nests? A tremendous yearning for mating and nest building. Why? The other question is, I have a friend or a lover or a husband or a wife. and he or she is interested in someone else. And it releases a dam burst of emotions, feelings, pain, agony, hatred, grabbiness, resentment, bitterness. Feelings of revenge coming up. Why should he or she have something that makes him or her happy and not me? One person in that situation said, in the face of this, my friend being with someone else, I don't even know what they're up to, but I know he's interested in someone else. He told me so. When the fury of anxiety and anger and all that goes with it, possessiveness, jealousy, when that abated a little bit, I sort of did an exercise in my mind, this woman said. I thought, what if I called him friend instead of lover? And not just called him that, but thought of him as that. And she said an amazing thing happened in the mind. What was narrow, grabby, possessive, turned into generosity, openness. She had a whole list of things that she experimented with and found out what the difference is between thinking of somebody as your lover and somebody as your friend. And then the question came up, why then marry? If the lover thing brings with it all of the bind, the instability emotionally, as soon as something happens, a person is not what one wants and is interested in someone else. And someone else brought out this immense yearning for someone to mate with, to live with. The tremendous pressure, in addition to the personal yearning, tremendous pressure of society to mate, to be married, to have children, to be like everyone else, which is felt in the system, and the feeling an outsider or not quite doing right if one doesn't have a mate, a spouse, children, doesn't live that life which has been sanctioned socially, and which one feels under pressure of conforming to. Which has a tremendous amount of self-image in it, feeling inferior if one has to say to someone else, I'm not married, I don't have children. The ideal image not being fulfilled, and the pain of that, the lack of that, pressure of it. But deeper, person was wondering, isn't there a human nature yearning for a mate? Is that something that is with all of us humans? And again, we can't really question that. That's what we have, and that's what moves us. And what's wrong with trying to fulfill it? What's wrong with trying to fulfill it is that it is unfulfillable. I may be jumping ahead, but the yearning for being related intimately, sexually, the image of it, the beckoning ideal of it, is not what actually happens when one does live together. The yearning isn't maybe temporarily fulfilled by some good time sensuality. The beginnings of maybe buying a home, the things that we get involved in, picking out curtains and things, or building a home, the effort of it, and one needs to work together on it. But then somehow or other the yearning is still there for something more than this person that one is living with now has committed oneself to. Because somehow or other he or she isn't quite what it all seemed to be at the beginning, when ideals were seen instead of the real person. So, where does this yearning come from? This yearning, this almost constantly unfulfilled yearning for something better, something more alive, something more caring, more to be taken care of, or someone that one could take care of more. It's part of that yearning, the yearning for finding wholeness or satisfaction, completion through another person, through a relationship, which moves and drives us, human beings, since all times. As though, as somebody who talked to me last week put it, as though that was our savior, the relationship, the mate is our savior. We used to have a savior we believed in, but he said that we most of us don't believe in that anymore. Religion has taken a back seat, this kind of religion. Now we seek this fulfillment and completion of being saved in either a career or a mate, in the nest we build. Saved from what? Completed in what? Can one question that? Look at that? Wonder about that? Or is one just going with the yearning, the loneliness, the pain of it? The disappointment of a broken relationship, and immediately the radar up for someone else to fill the void. Why are we lonely? Why are we yearning for someone to fill the loneliness? And if we say, well, it's human nature, it's how people are, well then if one is satisfied with that, one will not inquire any further. Not that the matter is settled or resolved. Why this yearning for someone? To take care of what? One's feeling of insufficiency, inadequacy, loneliness, or also for someone to give constant boost to this idea of oneself, the image of oneself. People tell me this, I found somebody and now I feel alive. I have new self-confidence. I have a new sense of self-worth with this person that I'm related to right now. So is one looking for the other person to keep affirming and boosting the idea of oneself, which sags and depresses and de-energizes if one feels not wanted, not liked, not like the other people in society who have their mate, who have their house, their children. And why don't we address ourselves to this? The tremendous demands and depressions, lacks, feelings, emotions, fears of this self-image of me. Is it that it is so hard to see? Or is it that we don't want to see it? Or that we think, well, this is just human nature. What do we want of another person in its most ideal sense? We want him or her to love me, make me feel good, fulfill my desire for whatever I may be craving or wanting or lacking at the moment. Or wanting to fulfill something for someone else, wanting to be needed and feeling better about oneself because one is needed, or feeling important about oneself. A tremendous boost to the self-image, to be needed by somebody. At least for a time being, it can get on one's nerves after a while. And we want then to be needed by someone else. Is this cruel talk? Or is this something that we can look at without judgment? I was just reading recently in a book that robins in their mating season don't need a complete female robin to be attracted to. All they need is a rounded red breast-like thing. And if that's provided out of plastic or material of any sort, the robin will go for it. In other words, it doesn't take in the totality of Mrs. Robin. Just her red breast. And a substitute will do. No, countless other examples which I've forgotten. We've often talked about it in meetings, many different people, that to be friends with someone is so different from the relationship as soon as sex enters into it And please, I'm not talking against sex or for friendship. And we're looking at things. That with a friend, like this woman said, there was the feeling of generosity. A friend has other friends and oneself has other friends. And having other friends does not conflict with one's friends. We can all go out together or meet together sometime. We don't have to vie for each other or impress each other if we know we're all friends. I mean, trying to get that other person's mate or protecting one's mate. What is it about a relationship when sex enters in, intimate sexual relationship? I don't think we can name all the complications. Don't need to name the pleasures of it, but the complications are. The main one is, you are mine now, I'm yours. And let's keep it that way. And an investment in also the image of a coupled pair. There's a new image and the investment in it. The other person becomes, so to speak, the extension of oneself. You're me, and I'm yours. We're one. And it's been sung about in poetry and sanctioned by the church for thousands of years, or by ritual. And there may be good sociological reasons for it, particularly the care of children, not to disperse in all directions, which we do now anyways. The kids are in daycare, which we're lobbying for to get better daycare. We need it, but it's not a substitute for home care. If the home is what amounts to a relationship on equal footing between husband and wife or lovers, and learning together with each other in the difficulty of relationship, finding out about each other, probing together into the difficulties, which we usually don't do, we have no precedence for. Of course, there's marriage counseling and marriage encounter and things. There are things like that. But we were asking, what is it about this matedness that causes the tremendous complications people tell me about it? All of a sudden, I'm now stuck. If I go out with a friend, my friend's husband or wife gets jealous of me. Doesn't have to be married. It can be just some sort of a commitment, maybe not through vows, but maybe not even through agreements, but one has gotten into this relationship and now one has to be with each other. That's the priority. And if one is not, then there's trouble. Then there's a change of moods, a feeling of being neglected, not loved as much as what she's out with right now or into it right now. Do we see what's at the basis of all of that? And is that inevitable? Does it have to be like this? This nurturing of our self-image, alone and as a couple. Not just nurturing, the fixating of it. And if anything would touch that, there's an outbreak of pain, emotion, fear, anger, jealousy, attack, withdrawal, threats to each other, blaming each other, or not speaking to each other. Why? Is it so deep? Is it so deep that wherever this is located, our habits? And we're so influenced by all the past scenarios of possessiveness and jealousy. Are they all impinging on us and we're helplessly victimized by that? Of course we think it's our own feelings, and of course they are felt here, but the whole past is reverberating when jealousy breaks out, or blaming, fault-finding, hurt, hatred. Or the reaction, goodbye, I'm leaving. Can't put up with this. I want my freedom. Whatever that is. The yearning again for someone else to fulfill what he or she did not fulfill. Does the living in the self-image in itself generate the yearning? The utter inadequacy of living in an illusory idea of oneself. Does that generate the yearning? And the yearning is misplaced, misfocused on someone else, or a job, some commitment to an ideology, a religious practice, or whatever, to make oneself feel more important, more adequate, more fulfilled, more complete. The question of the woman comes back up and the man, two different people. Why do we mate at all? Why do we marry? I'm not talking against, I'm not talking for, I'm not talking, incidentally, for promiscuity. Having all kinds of different lovers, being free-minded. There's problems in that one we'll find. Maybe not. Most people who are seriously involved in a relationship, a committed relationship, say, frankly, that takes enough energy. I wouldn't have any other. And if there is another relationship, then inevitably the energy has to be taken away from relationship number one. And it pales in that. It looks more boring even than at the time one broke out. More dull, pale, gray, unexciting. I remember once, years ago in my 20s when I went to school, becoming interested in all kinds of people who were doing experiments and were brilliant, and we talked so nicely together. And then coming home and hearing my husband talk about school problems, it seemed so dull. And I could see this paling going on of this man in my mind. The other was alive. It was like color, Kodak color, versus, like they do in these old movies when they show a flashback. It's sort of this, what is the color? Sepia? Sepia gray. That was going on. I could see that. And to the extent that the energy is there to be with each other, the color comes back, may come back. I don't want to pronounce any dogma. May not. Not every two people who live together can go together. There's sometimes impossible conflicts. At least we think they're impossible. We blame it on chemistry. This is so popular now to say we don't have the right chemistry. So how deep are we willing and interested to go? Are we coming here to this place to fulfill our yearning? Or are we here to spot the yearning, learn about the yearning? Whether it gets fulfilled or not, to trace it deeply to its very source. And what is that source? Not the idea of it, not the word, but can there be in touchness, non-judgmentally? That's a completely different source, this non-judgmental in touchness, awareness. It's like the woman said, when I think of friend, then something opens up. Then I'm not just there looking for somebody to do something for me. Then there is mutuality, interest in each other, and not the graspy possessiveness of this other person. It's open. The self, we came to that. The self isn't there right smack in the middle with all of its bottomless needs. And the way we conventionally think and the way it's portrayed in the poetry, movies, plays, is that the deepest level in our relationship is the sexual. That's really the depth of relating to. And that comes into play, then there's some kind of deep consummation of love or whatever is all spun around there. It may not be so. It may be off target. There may be a depth of relationship which has nothing to do with the sex. It doesn't condemn it, it doesn't outlaw it. But that's not the depth of it. And maybe the beginning of lots of complications which we talked about, including producing children that at the moment of parting are caught up in the grown-up's inability to relate to each other lovingly. These kids have no say in that. In the parting of parents, have no say in it. And the conflict is taken over by them. Maybe sort of sinks heavily to the bottom of consciousness, to be forgotten, not touched, not felt, because it's too painful. So it's 43. We have quite a bit of time to talk. If people would like to say, ask, comment, or just sit quietly. You don't have to raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hands. You can just say if you want to pursue something. Go into it again. Clarify.
Yeah, looking at somebody as a friend, as opposed to a lover, particularly if you are in a sexual relationship with them, that stepping back, I couldn't help but wonder if that's not really getting to the point, in that you may be looking at them as a friend, so you don't have to look at them as a lover, and therefore all this stuff doesn't come up, but are you really dealing with all this stuff? And I'm wondering if that's really a helpful technique, or what's going on there, as far as when somebody does that.
Yeah.
And maybe you can see it in a different perspective, but what's going on there?
Yeah, are you just manipulating concepts in your mind? And then sticking to that idea? Well, I didn't have the feeling with the woman that we talked together. Something seemed to really open up and reveal her graspiness of the man that was her lover, and all the feelings that went with this graspiness and the expectation of faithfulness. So in that case, it was not an escape. It was a revelation of what all went with her expectations of him as her lover. Hers had never dawned that clearly either. The ownership of the person. But I think it's a well taken point. Do we just shift something so we don't have to deal with it? And now attach to the idea of he's just my friend. And that there's no openness, no what you call generosity, meaning not what you're giving me, but a mutuality of giving and being.
There's something about what you call it in your mind, what type of emotions or whatever come along with it. I wonder if this person will just keep on saying, oh, after 5-10 years, this is a good friend, and never use that term lover again.
Well, what of it? The other person. What about ourselves? Are we, like Jim says, clinging to words so we don't have to deal with the rawness of feelings and emotions and where they come from? We just tell ourselves, well, we're above that, or cool, generous, and underneath the idea, the image of generosity, the heart bleeds. And is not felt to do so. To say that? You mean to say that?
I don't know, say it, just to feel it within oneself. This is mine.
This is mine. Are you asking who's the owner, or what does it do to say this is mine, he's mine or she's mine?
You say it or think it or feel it.
Mm-hmm.
It must be like...
Well, what does go with it as we look at it? He's mine, she's mine, this is mine.
Two people can go along and want to be with each other. Not necessarily say that's mine because they just want to be with each other, but that might be more of an ideal than...
The ideal is we'll be with each other, but we won't possess each other. But inside, the feeling is there. He's mine or she's mine. Is that what you're saying? And with that goes what?
If you're mine, you mean you don't want to do this with me, or you don't want to be this way with me, or...
And when she says or indicates, no, I don't.
And the importance of communication, you have to talk things out.
And she says, no, I don't want to.
I don't know if it's a generality or whatever. I remember a friend told me, read this interesting book by a psychologist, something like that. Men come from, when in a relationship or whatever, they come from more the intellect, where the woman comes more from emotions. And so already you're starting, it's almost like two cultures trying to get together, because they're coming from two different places. And at times I try to speak more from my emotions, but I can tell it's not easy. Where it seems it's so comfortable and easy with women. Almost so natural or something. So if we're coming from two different places, I can see where the communication could be difficult.
But do you feel that it is unmanly to come from emotion or to get in touch with emotion?
I'm sorry.
Do you feel that it is unmanly to be in touch with emotion as one maybe feels something trickling through the bedrock? Because the reason for the thing being the way it is already this imagery in which we're raised. Maybe there's something inherently in the male genes and female genes, I don't know. But certainly culturally, women are allowed much more expression of emotion and have more models for that than men do. So then if emotion does come up in you, what do you do? Do you feel it? Or do you feel the resorting to rational explanations of it all? Do you see both? The dynamics of it. And then the comparison with a woman and then feeling inferior. She can do this, I can't. Or feeling superior because she's just emotional and I'm intellectual. Rational. Can one watch all of that in relationship? to learn about each other's conditionings on an equal footing. The equal footing, as we said in the beginning, is the openness of listening. The other person may not have that openness of listening, but I'm on an equal footing with him or her anyways, because I'm listening. Or there is listening. The I is not involved in this listening. It's being illuminated, but it is not in the driver's seat.
You were mentioning at one point why we don't look at our yearning, where it comes from.
Yeah.
Seems to me the reason we don't do this is because it is such a powerful tool in getting us what we want. And that, there is a reward in going with it.
There is a reward in going with it. Yes, yeah. And maybe no reward in looking at it. So saying that has a real ring of truth, what you're saying. Can one watch that in oneself? At a moment of having some awareness of this powerful yearning to stop and look and see this drive to get what we want, the reward, and stop for a moment and let this all reveal itself. And that there's no reward, there's just discovery, and discovery of the truth of this instant of yearning and wanting to get something, and the idea of the reward that's beckoning, that actually triggers the yearning. Very often our yearning is triggered by the thought of what it is we want. And you could say, well, what gives us the power to stop and look in the midst of yearning? Is there a spark of interest to find out about ourselves? We do say it a lot. I want to know who I am, what I am, so forth. But at a moment like that, is that interesting to find out who we are? At the moment, we really are in the push and pull of this drive to get something. At that moment, what is going on? Moment of inner silence and motionlessness. And one may even find that if there is a moment of inner silence and motionlessness, the yearning is gone. Where is this thing we want to look at? It's not there. Because the mind is stopping to look. Like when you go to the doctor's office, you have all kinds of aches and pains, and then he says, tell me all about your aches and pains. Where are they? Here or there? And you're looking, and They seem to be just a memory. I'm not saying this is always so. And very often in looking, one can really see this drive. It doesn't stop necessarily in the looking, because there's flash on and flash off. The awareness is not there all the time, so the drive goes on, seemingly uninterrupted. But it can still be observed every once in a while. Get a flash of it to find out. And to find out what its root is. It's very bottom root. Does anybody else want to say something?